Everybody's got a story, you just have to listen. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and this is Good Listen. And are you prepared to go on a spiritual journey with me? Well, don't worry, we're not going to go on an ayahuasca trip with Aaron Rodgers in the middle of the jungle. No, no, no. Today I'm joined by Lisann Valentin. Lisann's got a great story. So she was a lawyer, an actress, and now she's a shaman who's guiding multi-passionate, high-profile individuals into their Akashic intelligence. Now, I will be completely honest with you. I don't know what any of that means, but we're about to find out. Lisann, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to be here, Joe.
Oh, I'm glad you're excited. And I want to start our conversation talking about spirituality and sort of how not everyone falls into a spirituality bucket. So I was born and raised in a Catholic family, immigrant family. So we were Catholic, and I was actually an altar boy for a hot minute, but then the hours sucked. I don't know if you realize, like, you have to wake up really early to be an altar boy. It's a lot. But as I've gotten older, my spirituality has developed. That I don't want to say I'm totally agnostic. I'm one of these people, like, I believe there's a higher power out there. But spirituality is very fungible nowadays. Even like the actual, like, old school, like Catholic and Judaism and Islam, they're all people kind of just, it's almost like I think someone once called it like grocery store religion, where you pick and choose what you want your spirituality to be. So tell me about your spiritual journey, because I know I think your family's originally from Puerto Rico. So, and I'm assuming there are some Christian values there, but how did that develop into the spirituality that you live through now?
Well, my on the surface, my grandparents were Catholic. And so everything that we did that didn't fall into the realm of Catholicism was secret. Like, nobody talked about it, and there were no explanations given. We just didn't bring it outside the family, which was easy since there was like always 50 people in my grandparents' house, so we didn't need to talk to anybody else about it. My grandfather is what is known as a curandero, shaman. And so he comes from a line of shamans, and he would help people, but again, it was very discreet. And then, he still would go to church, and you'd have to do all the things and the sign of the cross and all that. But like when he was home, he was working with energy, basically. I learned laying on of the hands, which is what I learned that language from Christianity. We did that regularly in the house. He was always praying over us. He was prophesying over us. You couldn't hide anything from my grandfather. And so I kind of didn't even want anything to do with it growing up. I learned what I could, and then I was like super Catholic. I thought I wanted to be a nun. Then I was like, wait a minute, there's a priest role. I want to do that. And they were like, you can't. And I was like, this is garbage. Why? Why can't I do that? That sounds better than nun. And so, like, I was always waiting for a call, and that it took a long time for me to answer that call. And I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, let me pull that thread though, because you mentioned that the fact that you came from, old school Puerto Ricans, and as most people don't know, it's always funny to me when people are like Latinos, they vote conservative. They're conservative. I'm like, the Latinos are probably the most conservative people you ever meet. And I jokingly say some Latinos are probably the most racist people you ever meet. So there is that, like, there's sections of Latin America that hate each other, which is weird. And people, like white people, will be like, well, why do you all hate each other? You're all Latinos. Like, no, we're not. We're all different. But I was curious in terms of like your grandfather's spirituality, because it was energy based and all this, and a shaman. That ain't being discussed in the Catholic religion. So how did that work in terms of like his environment and people around him? Was it accepted? Was it frowned upon? Like, what was because I'm telling you, Puerto Ricans take the Catholicism very seriously. So I'm curious what kind of pushback he got.
He was respected. So my grandfather was also very political in Puerto Rico. His name was very well known there. I even try not to say it just because, like, it's very directed to my family. It's not a common name. And so they knew him as a healer, right? So they didn't even say curandero unless you really knew what was going on. Then you'd be like, oh, he's a curandero, right? And which just means, the translation means healer. Shaman also means something like that. They don't do any healing. It's just energy based. And it's like, oh, the energy in me sees energy in you. Let's go. That's kind of how that works in the most basic terms. So from my understanding, everyone really loved both my grandparents, because my grandfather trained my grandmother. She was more of a channel. And I think the easiest way to put this is that everyone is really psychic and intuitive. We either decide we're going to ignore it, or we're going to lean in. My grandparents really leaned in, and the people that gravitated towards them were people that believed, understood, and witnessed it in themselves. And so I will say the way they practice certain things is very different than me. I feel like I'm more modern. I use a lot more mindfulness tools, right? Whereas they were very super mystic, but like everything about the Catholic Church was incorporated. Like, they celebrated La Virgen Milagrosa, which is the Virgin Mary, but like in the cool colors, like predominantly known in Mexican culture. They had like the Sacred Heart of Jesus, like they had that in the house. When my grandfather was no longer mobile, he'd get communion at home. And so like it was this sort of like they weren't separate to us inside the house, but to the outside world, they were two different things. Grandpa went to church, but when he was doing his energy work, it was a whole different modality. He was like being, I want to say like a deacon. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
someone who decided that he took on some robes in the name of God. That's basically how I can describe it.
That's so cool. All right, cool. Yeah, because it is funny. Like, I mean, it goes back to how I started. Is how religion is what everyone wants it to be. And so you said it took you a little while to discover what you actually were. So was there one of those Oprah aha moments? Was it just something that developed over time? When did you realize? And let me get this right. Well, I probably won't pronounce it, but Akashic. What
Akashic?
Akashic.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
All right. So tell me about your discovery of your current spirituality and how it all came about.
Okay. So I will say I turned it off a lot growing up. So I went to Catholic everything, like all the schools, even in college, right? And so we did a fundraiser, a palm reading was part of the fundraiser. And I was like, oh, I can do that easy. Like that's my normal. And then something like the volume rate is really high. And I remember I was like going crazy with this. Like my intuition was losing its mind, right? And I went home and I told my grandfather, and he scolded me because I started reading people that didn't sign up for the palm reading thing. And he was like, you never interfere with someone's destiny, basically. You don't go up to people and you don't read them unless they ask you. And I was like, I felt so shame. I felt a lot of shame in the moment because I'd never used my gifts. And the minute I used it, like if it was a Tonka trunk, just throwing it everywhere, like I got in trouble. And so then I shut it down. And it was like a lot of stops and starts with that. It didn't really come to like full blown. I listened to one of your podcasts, two of your podcasts before this. It didn't come full blown online until 2020. And it was there was an app called Clubhouse. And I'd already been reading the Bible for 5 years. I was looking for something bigger. I was like, something is here, but I don't know what this is that's calling me, but I feel it. Like it's gonna blow, right? I heard a shaman and a kahuna on a call on this app called Clubhouse. So kahuna is a shaman in Hawaii, and this shaman was in California that was talking. They were just conversing about energy and life and whatever. And I had physical like electricity coursing up and down my body that day. And I freaked out. I was
Wait,
like,
how did you
mhm,
find? Or people don't remember Clubhouse because it feels like ancient history now. It's
yeah,
basically like your old school like AOL chat room, but it's audio. How did you
right.
find that room?
Oh my god, I don't know. The room found me because I wasn't following either of these people. I just saw, like, interesting conversation, clicked the room. It was only me in the room with the kahuna and the shaman. They were just talking kinda I was, like, eavesdropping, so like this live podcast. And then my body went on, like, literally electricity. Like, imagine if you get, like, static, when you want to, like, lean into your spouse or something and you get, like, a static,
Yeah.
all over. And I was like, "What is happening to me?" I got on the mic, I got on the stage and started talking to them, and they were like, "Oh, like, basically, you're about to go on a journey." And I was like, "What?" And, that's when things started unfolding. I started gravitating towards shamans. They, like, found me in different traditions, mystics, and then some people that read the Akashic records. I'd never used that word before, but let's rewind. I've been meditating since I was 14 years old in high school. A nun taught me. And I would go on these vision journeys all the time. I didn't know that that wasn't normal because I'd been doing it forever. In one of these, a shaman appeared and basically said, "Are you ready to answer the call?" And this was like actually a shaman I'd seen before, like it was in my room. And I was like, "Yeah, totally." And then, and then I like got out of it and was like, "What did I say yes to?" And then it's like I doubled down on my lineage. So I will say, if you grew up in like Hogwarts school and you're not the most talented like student, then all of a sudden like you get handed like the magic wand and you're like, "Oh crap. Now I have a journey to go on, right? I need to have wisdom, discernment. I need to honor my family." Like there's a lot that happens when you say yes to the call.
Okay, so let's unpeel the Akashic onion.
Yeah.
For folks unfamiliar with that word, like me, what does it mean? Is it a religion? Is it like what is it? What is Akashic?
Okay, this is how I like to explain it. Akasha means ether. It's a Sanskrit word that means the ether or the heavens, right? And so in a lot of traditions, you hear a thing called the book of life, where it's supposed to be like the history of like your soul's journey, why you came here, what you're here to do, and all that. But it's also like the history of everything, all existence. Basically, I like to say is if you have you get a hit like, oh, I have this feeling I shouldn't go here today, right? I like to say that's getting like wine from the local bar. I like this glass of wine from the local bar. I can kind of feel like around this area I shouldn't go down that block. I'll go down this block. Okay. If you get I shouldn't go here because there's an event that's about to happen and I need to be really mindful, like very specific guidance. That's like getting wine from the vineyard of vineyards. That's the Akasha. Akashic Records is going to give you like the bigger picture, the eagle eyes view of why you shouldn't be at that place or why you should be at that place because you're about to embark on a journey. You're about to change the course of your life. You're about to shift careers. You're going to meet the love of your life. Like you'll get a bigger perspective of why instead of just don't go down the corner. So Akasha is like eagle's eye view of what the potential path is. Local bar is like, let's pull a tarot card and figure out if you should wear the blue dress or the red dress. You know what I mean? It's kind of like a different energy.
And so, give me a little background, just for again for folks who are unaware. Like, where does this come from? Is it what culture does it arise from? Like, well, we don't need to go deep dive here, but just out of curiosity's sake, like, where does it come from?
Multiple cultures call it different things, right? So, Book of Life is the most common, especially in Latino culture. The Book of Life. If you just Google that, you're gonna see that Disney movie. Remember Me is the song, and it's sort of like this idea. Hindu culture, the Sanskrit words, they all have this. If you think about the Bible, even talks about the Book of Life. It's in multiple religions. Is this idea that there's a divine library that you have access to it? But I look at it more than that. It's just a word to describe the same thing. It's you connecting with the divine and saying, "Guide me, lead me, show me." That's all really it is. People wanna, like, pick it apart and say, "No, it's this parchment." It shows up in our minds because 'cause we're creative however we want. It can look like a book, it can look like a parchment, it could look like a library, it could look like a spirit guide. Doesn't matter. For me, it's always, like, my connection with the divine, like, I can feel how light it is when it comes through. If it comes through, like, with a lot of fear, so, for example, a big election happened, people have feelings. If I'm leaning into people's feelings, I'm gonna get different information. That's not the Akasha, that's the collective.
Mm.
But if I lean into source, God, divine, it's like, oh, the bigger picture means that now I get to step out into the world and do what I came here to do, no matter what's happening in the collective. So the guidance is always higher. It's a bigger picture thing. And so you can look it up across modalities. If you're one of the major religions, it's mentioned. Akasha.
And so, if folks are curious about like delving into something like this, is it like, I mean, are there, I don't want to say churches, but are there like centers for it? Are there like how does one like learn about? I mean, obviously you help people with it, but like how does one learn about it outside of just like picking up a book and reading?
I teach it. I teach
Okay.
Akashic Intelligence just because I don't wanna, a lot of people read the records, right? And they'll read it for you. And I think that's great up until a limit, but I really believe you're more empowered when you learn how to do things for yourself. There are many schools. I learned from this woman, Emily Harrison. She has something called the Akashic Academy. She did, like, her first, like, semester free, and I did that initially because I wanted to understand why I was tapping into the Book of Life, and I didn't really know that they were the same thing until I took her course. I'd also worked with a shaman, and then she helped me, like, guide me through a process of how to get really into a meditative state so that way I can I can be a clear channel for the guidance. What happens is, here's the deal. Let's say I'm gonna use the oracle card thing again. Like, if you're familiar with, like, let's even playing cards. I could take a playing card and say, "Oh, your destiny is, like, the king of whatever." I should know something about playing cards before I use that as an analogy. Ace of spades, I don't know, whatever, like, king card. And, like, this is what your destiny is, whatever, and I'm gonna filter it through my experience. And I'm like, "Oh, you know what? In the past, I had a boyfriend, and this kind of must not mean something good." Like, that's not the Akasha. The Akasha is gonna be like, I think you can take 3 different paths here, and in the first path, this is what it could look like. In the second path, this is what you can expect, and the third, from this point, this is what can happen. You get to choose your destiny. It's a very different feeling. It's because Akasha is not gonna tell you that you're right or wrong. So, let me use different language. The divine, God, in my perspective, loves you, and when you ask for help, you get it, and if you're looking to see what path you should choose, the question is not which path, it's what will serve my highest good. So when you lean into the records or Akashic Intelligence, you're asking better questions. So this was the mindfulness things come in, right? You want to have a better communication circuit with whoever your higher power is. If you ask yes or no questions, you're gonna get really limited answers. If you ask open-ended questions, kind of like a whole world opens up to you and you start seeing paths you didn't know existed. So that's a difference between like getting guidance from the local bar or going to the vineyard. So yeah, you can totally go to school and learn. There's online classes. There's actually some institutions, I think in New York. I've not gone to them. I do this online and it's like you can do free stuff. You can look it up. It's really about meditation, mindfulness, and getting really aware of like your inner software, just upgrading it so you can get the guidance.
And do you notice with people you work with, is this religion adjacent? Like, are people that, maybe practice Judaism, practice, maybe even let's say, someone who's a Mormon. Like, are there?
Yeah.
Is it agnostic to religion? Like, you can practice this, but also be involved with another religion.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's not about religion. It's about, like, the source of unconditional love that you're tapping into. So, like, I know people that are Jewish that read the records, that are Muslim that read the records, agnostic that read the records. It doesn't matter. It's really I'm saying read the records. It's really just tapping into the highest forms of unconditional love and getting guidance from there. So that looks like journaling. That looks like channeling. That looks like asking better questions. Yeah.
Nice. And so I'm just curious because you mentioned that you popped into a clubhouse in 2020 and this
Mhm.
happened.
Yeah.
I often ask the sliding doors question. Would
Mhm.
you be here talking to me 5 years later about being on this Akashic journey if you hadn't popped into that clubhouse? Because it seems like it's always been sort of like subconsciously there, but having these conversations in 2020 brought it to the front of your consciousness. Do you think that would have happened eventually, or was just one of those things? It was just like the right place, right time.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you an answer that probably won't be cool, but I like to think that when people are destined to connect for however short or however long, it's always gonna happen. So, more than likely, there's a timeline where I said no to being a shaman, and I'm still here promoting some show, some book, something else. It would have been something else because it's not like I quit my other things. I'm still doing those things. It's just that and that's my perspective, the person you run into in the grocery store, the gas station, like, all of this, it's aligned because we all decided to come here at this time to make this world a better place. You do it with your platform. You have a dharma, you have a spiritual calling in your own way, it's part of it is this. Some spiritual gifts don't look spiritual at all. But, yeah, the sliding doors would still I think would still get me here, it would just be totally different circumstances.
Cool. All right. And you mentioned the things you've done, and so you've lived a very typical life. You've been an attorney, actor, and shaman. Um, so obviously I say that in jest, but like that's not average. That is very different. So if and again, that would be a whole other podcast going through all the careers of your life. But can you tell me how being on the spiritual journey changed along the way what professions you had, or maybe they were just happening at the same time and they were on like two different tracks? Like, tell me about like this career path and your spiritual path.
Yeah. So what I'll say is this, I started writing to God in a journal when I was 8. Literally, I would complain to God, talk about awesome things to God. I would have the journal still. It's like they're very short conversations, but I was always writing. And while at the same time, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And so that writing never stopped. So when went to law school, I was writing to God. When I decided that I was gonna not practice law and be a fifth grade teacher, I was writing to God, and I felt really like the divine was aligning these things for me because I was learning different skill sets that I need now. So I learned about how to be I actually went to school to be an elementary school teacher. That was my backup plan before I went to law school. And I got licensed, then I did that, then I went to law school, do a lot of hopping around. Then I taught, then I practiced law for 8 years on Wall Street, and then I quit, got a job off Broadway immediately, wound up back on Wall Street on the red carpet for this major event. It was like full like, this is a great movie in my mind of, like, when I really think about it, it's incredible, not without its ups and downs. But the whole time it was divinely guided. Even when I resisted, even when I complained, even when I was suffering, I let go and I surrendered and doors are open. And it's not common, it's not typical, but it is a testament to the strength of my faith that I was able to leap and the net always appeared. And so if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be able to say I'm a New York Times bestselling author. I wouldn't be able to say that I've appeared on as many TV shows and movies as I am as my age is right now, which is 45. I'm okay with saying my age. Thanks. And, Yeah, and I still have my license to practice law. I don't use it as a profession, but I use it with, contracts and all the business stuff that go on with being an entrepreneur. But it also helps me to help the people that I serve, that I have, I've done a lot of things which helps the people that come to me understand that, I know it wasn't easy. I I have a lot of education. I have a lot of life experience.
I get too much education, Lisann. I don't know if
It's
that's
a lot.
you got a lot.
I know, I'm telling you, but, people are surprised because, I'm the one that's outside and I talk to the butterflies, and I'm like, "Oh my god, it's this rainbow," you would think that education destroys your connection to play and joy in life, and that's actually not true. I think that's like a conditioning, you get really serious. You work to retire so you can die somewhere warm, and that's okay for some people, but that wasn't for me, and there's a lot more people that are kinda following that same path, and that's when they find me.
Wow. So, I'm not going to psychoanalyze you or anything like that, but it almost seems like you need to have this strong spiritual backbone to deal with all those pivots because, like I said, they weren't like they weren't slight pivots. Like you were doing major shifts. So, without having that strong spiritual backbone, you probably wouldn't have been able to pull all of those off, especially at a high level. I mean,
No
probably
way.
people might pivot in any way, but doing it at a high level, I think you need that additional support, right?
For sure. I mean, there's no way. This is not about me. Literally, I honestly don't think there's anything really special about me. I think that I was afraid and did it anyway. And it's because my faith was strong enough to guide me through it. Truly, truly, truly. And even though that went from Catholicism, Christianity into this sort of I love all religions. And I just love the idea of there's this divine force that is the highest forms of unconditional love that guides me no matter what I want to do. That's kind of what that's my jam. If I had a t-shirt, it'd be yeah, my religion is love. I'd be very Bob Marley. Um, this would be this was the guiding force. I think if you have something propelling you, for some people, it's their children, right? That really is a driving force to everything they do. For some people, it is religion. It just depends. If your driving force is something other than love, though, I would ask you to take another look. Take another look. There has to be something bigger driving you in this world?
Yeah, I love the way how you describe the relationship of spirituality to how you live your day to day because I am one of these again pretty agnostic people that my eyes roll when I see like a athlete be interviewed after the game and they ask them about tell us about that play and the first thing they say is I praise to God, thank God, and everything like that. And not that I don't think I always feel like I always feel sometimes religion is displaced. Like there's time and place to discuss it, but you describing how strong a hold it had on you in terms of of development as a human being that now I can kind of see it again. I know I'm not very smart, but I could see now why athletes would be like, oh, okay, there's a reason I'm doing this. So thank you for explaining that way because I sometimes again I have a very libertarian point of view of life. I'm like, do you as long as it doesn't hurt anybody. So, but
Yeah.
sometimes my sarcastic New Yorker does let an eye roll out. So, thanks for explaining this. Just your spiritual journey, how it sort of drives you, and if you take that one, it's almost like playing Jenga. If you take out that one little block, all of it topples down, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, right, you want a strong foundation. It doesn't have to look like religion. For me, this can challenge some people's beliefs, right? If I say the divine lives in you as you. Life isn't happening to you, it's happening for you. You get to co-create that existence. Some people who see divinity, God, higher power as separate from them will bristle, right? Some people who see a higher power as a punishing force that you have to earn that love, they won't receive what I'm saying. They won't listen to this. They won't hear this at all. But if you see that the universe, divine, who whatever, your higher power, the highest version of you, your soul's essence, whatever is guiding you and pulling you forward when you keep saying yes to the things that feel good to your soul. And even if that's just I keep seeing you have children, right?
Hell no, just a
You
dog,
don't have kids, just a dog.
just a dog. That
I
dog.
keep seeing this idea of a father figure looking into their kid's eyes,
That's
right?
me looking at my dog Nathan, who's sitting
There
by
you
me right
go.
now.
See, right in that connection with your dog, you see love. Like your dog doesn't really want anything but to be fed and to be loved, right? And and honestly, what if people are gonna be so pissed when I say this, God doesn't need you to feed them, right? This divine in you doesn't need anything but love. That is what nourishes them. And actually, if you don't love that divine, they're fine. But, like, when you decide to say yes, it's like that love magnifies. It's like, "Oh, you love me, I love you back." You give your dog a treat, your dog's all over you, right?
Yeah.
Your dog's not going anywhere, period, right? So, it's a really weird example, but
No, I like that. You know, it's funny you talking about this concept of love, how it doesn't have a particular shape. It comes in all different sizes. I almost feel like here we are in 2025 and we're in a love deficit. Like compassion is just like gone. Like everyone like looks down at other people. And I don't want to get into the technology part of it, which I'm sure fuels some of this. But how does your work help when you help people along this journey in terms of filling that? Because I think some of us are so hardened, especially if you live in a major metropolitan area where it's all about the hustle and it's all about like getting paid and all the shit that comes with it, especially in some industries. But how does connecting with the spiritual side and going on this journey with you, how does it help fill that? Because I feel sometimes a lot of people just don't feel any love. That's what makes them into assholes and what makes them hardened. And you could just flip on your Facebook app and you'll see that right in front of your face. But like, tell me about how this going on a journey like this can help people who feel like, man, the world's a shithole and nobody cares about me.
oh my god, that's such a layered question. Okay, it's funny because I saw a poem earlier today, and something told me to keep it out. Okay, I'm gonna be here reading poetry in your podcast, but it's sort of like I'll send it to you if it needs to be quoted, but it's sort of like this idea of like, look in the mirror at the love that's been with you your whole life that you abandoned for the love of another. And, like, invite that version of you to sit to have a feast. Like, my whole life is that. When I talk to people that feel like they don't understand love or they can't even understand the love of a divine force living in them as them because they've never really known love, then we have to get to the root of that. We have to find the thing that they love, and for some people, it is their dogs. I have a lot of people in my life that have, like, they're advocates for animals, and so then we anchor into that. We find the thing that they do love and we help them magnify that so they can remember that they came to this place from love. When you start shifting that perspective, but like you are loved, you are loved. I can look at you, I can look at the worst things that you have done and not even flinch because I can hold that space with you without judgment. When you start experiencing that, in your life, actually what you see on Facebook is gonna change. Actually, what you see on the street is gonna change. Actually, what you see when you're driving down the road is gonna change because your perspective has changed. That's where the mindfulness things comes in because the more you focus on, like, how the world is burning, because it is literally burning right now, all you're gonna see is fire. But if you look at yourself as the one that came with the water, life looks like it's ready to be reborn, that there's something new coming on the horizon, that you are there to help support this system just by being who you are, not by running in the streets, being an advocate or fueling more of the same shit. Like, that's not what we're here to do. We're actually here to amplify what we know is possible. If you can amplify what's possible, meaning you show up happier, you smile at someone, you actually help someone with their grocery bags. I don't know, you spend a little extra time with your dog and you feel that kinda, like, sadness that's happening in your heart. You say, "Oh, maybe I feel a little better today. I'm gonna go out for a walk today. I'm gonna do something different today." Your whole reality changes, and so you start finding love in other places, in the trees, in the butterflies in the sky, in your clothes, the way you dress, the way you wash yourself, the way you look at yourself, the way you talk to yourself. These sound like really simple things, but you change these little things and your life actually changes and you start seeing love in more places.
Hmm. There is the phrase you hear a lot in therapy and even everyday life, but like you can't love anyone else unless you love yourself.
Mhm.
It almost seems like that's the way you're explaining it too. Like it just starts with you first.
Always.
And so what? Yeah, this could be hard, and it's hard.
Tell
It's
me,
hard
what
to have
is
this
it?
as a generalized question, but why do people have so much trouble loving themselves? Like from your experience, and I know this is more of a generalized answer, but because I think that's why if you look at the political divide, you look at the even the religious divide anywhere on this globe, a lot of it stems from just like this self-loathing and this lack of love with themselves and reaching out to something else to fill that. Um, why do you think we many of us have trouble loving ourselves?
Okay, I'm gonna say it in a weird way, because why not? Um, they're playing Mario Brothers. This whole game, let's say we're playing Mario, you know the game Mario Brothers? Okay. And, like, you're trying to get the stars and the mushroom, and then you fall into the freaking pit, and you're like, "Shit, I can't do this, I gotta do this again." And you start getting frustrated because 'cause you're not good at this game, and it's like That's kinda like how life is. If you play that game without a reward system, you'd be a lot easier on yourself, right? Except for now we're in life school, and everyone that's already been in life school wants to teach the littles how to play the game, right? And so when you're little, you're not seeing things. So one concrete example is I'm considered trigueña, right? Like I'm tan, even though I'm very pale today. And I was the most more the one of the more tan people in my family. And I didn't know that I was darker than most of my cousins. And I remember someone told me, "Oh, but yeah, you're like so and so, another cousin who's also she was darker than me at the time. Like you two are the darkest ones here." And the way they said it was like I should be ashamed of that.
Hmm.
Because you were talking about how in our culture sometimes there's a divide about
Oh
skin
yeah.
tone and all that. And I was like, "Wait, what?" And I kind of remember just standing there frozen, like, I'm different than everybody. Wait, that different is bad. I shouldn't be this color, right? And it's weird if you look at me, presenting, I don't seem dark at all, but this is a nuanced thing, right? I'm Latina, I have indigenous African, Spanish blood. It's a big mix. Um, but once I saw that color in me, I couldn't unsee it. And then I was trying to figure out, well, what else made me different? Then I tried to find myself on TV and I saw Felicia Rashad and I was like, oh, I look like her. My hair is like her. I'm dark like her. Like I'm like her. She spoke Spanish. She was from Brooklyn. That's all I needed, right? And so, like, but if I thought that that was bad to look like her, I wouldn't want to look like her. And then I would feel shame anytime anyone said I looked like her, right? And then I would want to maybe make my hair super blonde or I wouldn't want to get tan. You see how this keeps going and now I feel
Yeah.
shame because I'm not enough because if I was enough, someone would love me, right? And so if this is what we're doing, we're living life because we're trying to meet someone else's expectations and we don't find that root, like kind of like inner child work. We don't find the root of that, then we're gonna keep trying to get satisfaction and feel enough through someone else's validation, and then life is a cyclical hell. It just is. And so, yeah, getting therapy, mindfulness modalities, getting the support you need to figure out where in the video game did you start losing, and then that was a bad thing. Where you're like, "Oh, shit, I" you could play the video game Mario Brothers and fall and not care. "Oh, whatever, I do it again, so what?" Or you can beat yourself up about it, right? It's a different approach to the same thing. So, very long-winded answers, Joe. I know I give you these long
No, I get it.
stories, but
No, it makes sense. And it's funny you talk about this cyclical way of life. And my wife always jokes about how like every day is Groundhog Day. And she's like, thank God that movie came around because there's no other way to explain it. Because I think for many people, life is Groundhog Day. Like you go to bed at the same time, you get up, you work the same amount of hours, you have dinner, you watch some TV, go to bed, and it just repeats itself over and over again. And for some people, unless there's a break in that, when finally Bill Murray learns how to play the piano and he falls in love with Andy McDowell, and all of a sudden he wakes up the next day and he's living a new life. So I think that could wear on people, and I think it does, especially if that cyclical manner is shitty. Whether it's you have a bad job, you're in a bad relationship, you're living in a bad area. So all of that just takes a toll on people's, I guess, love of themselves.
I will say you have a choice. No matter where you came from, you have a choice. You can choose Groundhog Day. You can choose it. Or you can say, "I'm gonna make a different choice today." And literally, you could be like it's your sliding doors example, right? Because first of all, I love that movie. You can go to a different coffee shop. You can take the long route home. You can shift something to create this neuroplasticity in your brain, like you're creating new connections to shift your reality. You know how kids used to play, oh my god, punch buggy? Like if you saw, did you have a Volkswagen? So your reticular brain is looking for this. So like the green Volkswagen buggy or whatever. Now you're focusing on that. You shifted out of Groundhog Day. You're looking for something else. Again, it's like we talked about earlier, like you can see the world on fire, you can see it full of love. You can choose Groundhog Day every day, or you can do something different. You can come home tomorrow with a bouquet of lilies for your wife. And that just shifted something in your day. It's not the same as yesterday, right? She can do something different for you. And it shifted everything. It's these little shifts that get you out of it that shift the whole trajectory, literally because it becomes sliding doors in the end. So I just want to say, like, if you are in Groundhog Day, do one thing different. Do one thing different. I'm telling you, it's going to start shifting everything. Just pick one small thing a day. You can pick the BS or you can pick the extraordinary. I always pick the extraordinary.
That's awesome. And it's funny the way you describe that is so simple, but I think sometimes people feel like, no, I need to do something bigger. I need to go jump out of a plane, or I need to, learn karate. You know what I'm
Yeah.
Funny how one little thing can shift your perspective, and then those little things kind of add up into big things, as we all know. But that's a great way to think about it. Let's wrap things up talking about your work and how the people you work with. So if you go to your IG, this is your description. It says the shaman next door guiding multi-passionate, high-profile leaders into their Akashic intelligence. So let's start with, we know we've already gotten the fact that you're the shaman next door. But who are these multi-passionate, high-profile leaders that you work with?
I work with a lot of people that are like Emmy winners, Emmy award-winning producers or actors, TED people that have had held the TED stage, best-selling authors, politicians, judges, but they also have like they're multi-hyphenate. So they do multiple things. So a lot of them are also writers or they were once performers. And so they have a lot of interests, or they also are advocates. It just depends. Usually it's 2 or 3 things they choose. And Akashic intelligence is what I describe as like the vineyard of vineyards. They really want to learn how to tune in to that divinity within so they can make, oh, I'm getting chills. They can make aligned choices, right? For their next pivot, their next step in their career, their next step in their leadership. So these are all people that know they're here to do something really big with their life, and they're either doing it or they're pivoting into it, and they're wanting to like basically do what I did, lean into that love within and say, "Okay, what's the next step? Show me. Let's do this."
Hmm. And lastly, we are living in a gamification society. Everything is points, likes, favorites, views. Um, how does living, following this modality of the Akashic principles, how does it help in that respect, in terms of like trying to find a way where you're not always seeking out other people's approval? Because I feel like that's the world we're living in. I mean, and we're not going to change it. I know people are like, oh, well, Instagram no longer shows how many likes it has. Like, people still know how many likes a photo has. So, tell me about how this can help people work through this gamified life that we live in.
It's so funny how you compared this to Mario Brothers.
Mhm.
Well, I think that if you're leaning into like getting guidance, I'm gonna close my eyes for this because this feels important. So you're leaning into this idea that you're sourcing guidance from the highest forms of unconditional love. This is outside of the frame of validation. This is outside of a human framework. You're trying to take what this celestial energy has, bring it in. You're the anchor between heaven and earth, right? And so you're deciding that you're walking with purpose regardless if it goes against the grain. You're speaking your truth regardless of what someone else might think. I'm not saying to do that without wisdom and discernment, without kindness, but what I'm saying is that to hide what you came here to do. Don't hide it. Like, we can be in conversation. You don't have to agree with me, but we can just sit and hold space for each other. When you dive into the Akasha, you can hold space. You can hold space, honor your truth, and I can honor my truth, and we can just listen. And so, literally, the most basic way to say this is like you're learning how to really listen to that guidance from within. And if you're in that mindfulness space where you're really here, really paying attention, you don't really give a shit about likes or views. You don't care. You don't care. My hair is purple, my lipstick is red, and my blouse is yellow, and I don't care. You understand? Like, I'm just gonna honor how I feel today. This is who I am. And I'm not trying to minimize that because for some people to get to this wild, like, I don't give a shit phase, it takes a while. It can take forever, but it's possible. And so what I help people do is just to remember that they're actually not here to please anyone, but to honor their soul's call. And when they do that, they find their tribe. And so that's why I say I'm the shaman next door, because once you find your tribe, that we're there, we're together, we're in it.
Love it. Her name is Lisann Valentin. Lisann, if folks want to go on this journey with you, find out more about you, where should they start?
lgvalentine.com.
Awesome. Lisann, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Good Listen. Thanks for joining me on this spiritual journey. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, it would be awesome if you could tap that thumbs up button on YouTube. It's a small gesture, but it really helps the channel. If you're listening on Apple or watching and listening on Spotify, a 5-star review would be amazing. If you'd like to catch up on past episodes and my past blogs, go to joepardavila.com. Thanks again. I will see you next time. Adios.